as professionals in your own right at different parts of your career, what would you want to tell your university self that you didn't know back then that you do know now? So what would you, if you had a message for your university self to say, listen, this is what you need to know, what would that be? And that's open to anyone.
Guess I'll jump in. If I had to kind of go back and kind of rewind the tape a little bit, setting expectations for myself on what, because they always talk about in business and adding value, and there's this kind of this loose concept of adding value, and kind of at varsity you just immediately assume, oh, you're going to be doing these reports, driving profits, doing these crazy analytics, running these crazy models, and very often it's adding value is not what you think it is. It's just sometimes it's the job that no one else has thought about doing, or no one else really wanted to do, but is really actually critically important to the business. So when I got to the job that I got to, there was this gaping hole in our documentation, and clients needed documentation, and it's a really, really important feature to your business that clients can relate to the software that they're paying for. So it wasn't like I was employed as a software developer, and kind of you would think kind of analytic software development would be your thing. But the biggest value that I added in my first 3 months was actually just doing documentation, and kind of rewinding the tape. I wish I had told myself that adding value, much like what you think you're going to be doing and what you actually end up doing in a job, is going to be radically different. So adding value can be almost anything that the business needs, and kind of being open to that would be kind of the biggest advice I could give myself. But yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Does anybody else want to add to that?
Happy to go. So I think one advice is immediately you're about to get a workplace or get a mentor, someone who can be your friend, someone who can help you learn how to work, understand the workplace, also help you to deal with tough situations, because any work environment has difficulties, controversies, the environment is a bit shocking. The mentor can also be your cheerleader, because adversity, when you get your marks back, the mark itself is a cheerleader, like, oh, I got a distinction. But no one does that at work. But your mentor can encourage you to deal with the next steps and to continue keeping up, because remember, at work they pay your salary. So at adversity, they reward you with good marks, and you get promoted to the second year, or maybe get your degree. So a mentor will help you go a long way in accelerating faster. I'm not saying without a mentor you won't succeed. You might find it a bit more challenging, and we've seen that with a lot of guys who join the organization. Sometimes they prefer to be independent. Some of them, end up missing out on better opportunities because they didn't have someone to provide guidance on even how to approach those areas.
I want to add to that comment that Mark made, because I think it is absolutely crucial. Having a mentor, and I want to say completely out of the context of work, is also just as important. But if there's one thing you want to get as soon as possible in your life, and I think when you start varsity is a good idea, is get mentors and be a mentor to people, because you're also going to learn tons by thinking how you can guide someone else, because it makes you critically think about what mistakes they are making, and it'll open up blind spots. So Mark, I can't agree more with you on that. Touching on Christopher's point as well, though, around value, I think I wish I was more keen on doing internships, and don't think massive internships at big corporates. I'm talking working at a video store, or even trying to sell fish and chips somewhere, or I don't care what you do, but it's going to just unpack a little bit of something in you of saying, why am I doing this? Why am I getting a salary for it, whether it's 5 Rand or 10 Rand or 50 Rand? It's going to hopefully answer some of those questions of you thinking, more than the CEO or the founder, and you can say, well, how can I do it better? So I'd say, internship small little pieces of work getting involved to try and understand, what is value, why am I getting paid? Something that I actually quite regularly do, especially to junior team members, is I actually ask them, why am I paying you? And I usually prelude the question by saying, what was your salary? What was paid into your account, a week ago on payday? What was that number? And usually people can answer that quite accurately, even take a rand or two. They pretty much know what is supposed to be coming around the 25th. And then, just after that, I'd say, but why did I pay you that? And then you can see people getting very uncomfortable. And often as statisticians, we want to get paid that because we are clever. But guess what? Being clever doesn't add any value. So if you don't understand how what you're doing is adding value to a stakeholder, shareholder, customer, or your colleagues, ultimately it's just those three entities that's sitting around you in business, then you're in risk, because if you can't defend your salary, then why are you getting paid ultimately? But anyway.
Thanks, Paul. A very interesting way to look at it. If somebody walked up to me and said, why are we paying you? Then I would be like, oh, crumbs. I'm sure I could list a few things that I do, but I would automatically think that I've done something wrong and that they shouldn't have. But thanks for that. I do think that it's an important reflection practice to say, listen, I am adding value. I'm doing this, but you need to know that is what you're contributing. So rather than doing it blindly or being just out of touch with your surroundings. Has anybody got anything else that they would like to add? I mean, everyone wants to know, wants to speak to their past self. So
I really like the mentor point, and I think something that I kind of learned is picking someone trying to find a mentor that's really smart and trying to just be in the meetings, like just try and be in the room, be in the meeting. Even if you don't say anything, you learn so much, like being in the meeting with the executives. You start thinking like them, you start understanding the value add. So like at our workplace, if you kind of want to say, I want more money, you have to show how much money your project's brought in. And you don't understand that unless you at the table. So just trying to get a seat at the table, it's amazing. Like it just makes your career path like Zoom once you start thinking like executives think and like they think. So yeah, I'll definitely say just try to get a seat at the table, even if you don't say anything. Don't embarrass yourself. Stay on mute.
good advice for everyone.
Yeah, I think for me, I would tell myself to kind of say, building a model does not make me a statistician or a data scientist, because I think that's what most of us get mostly fascinated about, right? I mean, you come from varsity, there's an Excel data set consisting of not more than, well, Excel has a maximum of 1 million rows, but I mean, at varsity, it's even smaller than that, and it's this perfect data set. And with this perfect data set, it's meant to fit a normal distribution perfectly so that other underlying theoretical things could be taught, right? When you get to industry, it's something that's completely different, So what I would really tell myself is understanding data. I know, different people have different perspectives on saying data is data at the end of the day, but understanding data gives you domain knowledge about whatever it is that you're trying to solve, and that's very important. Important even more than actually building a solution at the end of the day, because then using data that you really don't understand to kind of build a model, you won't be able to really quantify, as Paul was saying, the output of whatever it is that you are getting out. So, understanding data is really crucial. And if it means that you understand that data through cleaning it, for a month or two, that's the process.
Thanks. Yeah. Victoria.
Something that I just wanted to add, sort of a little bit of different direction from what the others have been saying. I kind of wish back at varsity I'd realized how what you get taught at university is not to say it's not the important part, obviously it is, but you're not actually going to be running t-tests and ANOVAs and whatever moving forward, and so much more about, there's so much more that you actually learn at university. And it's not actually the content only, it's interacting with supervisors, students, socializing, the time that you spend in between lectures, managing your time. At school, everything gets done for you. Suddenly you have to prioritize whether you drag yourself out of bed with a hangover at 7 o'clock in the morning or not to go to your lecture and stuff like that. And that's all part, I think when I was at varsity, I thought the content was everything that I had to learn.
Yeah.
But actually you're learning so much more at the time and taking that into the working world.
Yeah, so taking in the experience, not just the content. That's something that I try to tell my students all the time. It's like, you need to be in class because you're learning how to get things done on time, to get yourself ready, to get places, and you need to stick to deadlines because of the same thing. Because so it's not just, oh, crumbs, I didn't know how to do a t-test, or I didn't know how to fit a regression model. So before I had, Carmela, do you have anything that you wanted to add on that? Because
I think for me, it was like when I was starting to apply for jobs and stuff, I was like, I have a master's degree, I'll know stuff. But it's actually not like that. Like, I think what I would tell myself is like, you have like a lot of extra time in your holidays and you start getting bored and you don't know what to do with yourself. I think I would have liked to have learned more stuff that I could have actually applied in the working world. So like, maybe because our degrees are mainly theoretical, I would have liked to have learned more of the practical side of it. And there's a lot of online courses and small things you can do that will help you in your workplace. And it's like, even with my job now, I only got the job because I had computer science background. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have gotten it. So if you just have theoretical background and that's it, it could be a little bit harder. So I think I would have definitely told myself to use my time wisely when I had nothing to do.
Very good point. Thanks, Carmela. I think that is that you, from my side, and I know that I am in an institution of learnings, but I also feel like a learning spirit, I could call it, is important for growth. So you mustn't say, okay, well, I know what I know and that's enough. You should, the attitude should be, that's not enough. And I mean, like, I can go read up about something, whether it's politics or a machine learning algorithm. It's something just to expand your knowledge. And I mean, that adds a lot of value outside of that degree that you might hold up at the end of the day. The one thing I did want to add on what you were talking about, having a mentor and being a mentor, I think that I learned more about academic writing by having to supervise a master's degree or supervise an honors degree than I ever did doing my master's or my honors. Because and there's a lot of things that get lost in when you're doing it. You're like, okay, I'm doing this just so that my supervisor can be happy with the way I wrote that sentence, and so I can move on. And you miss what the supervisor is actually trying to get you to understand. And a lot of that only comes once you see it from the other side. And so while it's important to get a mentor, I think being a mentor is equally important to the people that come through, because that's often where a lot of the learning begins, at least in my experience of it. All right.
Just before we kind of jump onto something else, I'd like to kind of latch on one last thought to what Camila said about doing stuff in the holidays as a student. And I've only realized this kind of in retrospect, is when you're a student, all these companies like Microsoft, Amazon, all the big tech companies, they're trying to get you in your student years to kind of, they're throwing a lot of free stuff at you, which you don't realize until you have to start paying for it when you're working. So a lot of courses that are free as a student cost a lot when you have to pay for it on your own. So kind of my advice kind of to anyone who's looking at doing kind of courses on your own or something like that is do it while you're a student. A, it's cheaper, and B, it's great to put on your CV that you're actively doing stuff kind of just beyond your coursework.